Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Wednesday, April 15th media availability. We have Interim City Manager Adam Laughlin here with us to give you an update, and he's backed up by Deputy City Manager Mary Pearson, who takes care of our Finance and Corporate Services Department. We're proud to have, once again, interpretive support from Kevin Culp and Amanda Amoth, and we appreciate their help. There are two reporters online, and we'll go to questions after we've heard from Adam. Adam, over to you.
Thanks, Katrin. Thanks, everyone, for being here, and virtually and in person. Today has been a difficult day for the city. While many of us were in budget with council, others were facing different challenges. Tragically, around 11 this morning, there was a fatal collision between a woman and an ETS bus near the intersection of 50th Street and 118th Avenue. Our condolences are with the woman's family and friends, and we're also thinking about everyone else involved. The police are conducting a thorough investigation, and Edmonton Transit Service is cooperating fully. At this point, we can't speculate on the cause of the collision. I'm now going to turn to matters that we discussed at City Hall. Today we updated City Council on the budget impacts that COVID-19 is having on our city budget. We looked at lower revenues, declines in demand for service, and different timeline scenarios for returning to service. Operationally, we have reduced transit service, closed rec centers, and adjusted parking. This means significant changes for Edmontonians. This also means lower revenues in our budget. Our COVID response has also brought additional costs. Some of these include expenses related to the Expo Center or public education around operational changes and COVID-related restrictions. With scenarios based on September or December timelines, our estimates show that the city could lose between $168 million and $260 million this year. These impacts are serious. Today we talked about using a number of financial tools to balance the budget, and we will return to Council on April 27th for a more detailed discussion about specific options. There are difficult decisions ahead, and those decisions include spending reductions. At his midday news conference today, Mayor Iveson mentioned that there will likely be further temporary reductions in staff. In an organization where a high proportion of our costs are salaries, this is one of our expenditure reduction options. I don't want to sugarcoat this. The executive leadership team and I are having frank and realistic conversations with Mayor and Council and our union and management partners about this very action. I know this will create even more uncertainty for our city employees. This may be especially troubling for those who have other family members who have experienced job loss. This is the situation that we're in, and I wish I had a different message to share with our city employees. Rest assured, when further temporary layoffs are announced, employees will hear from us first. Those affected will be supported in ways like we supported our community and recreation facility colleagues with supplementary unemployment benefits to help ease the temporary loss of a regular paycheck. I know I've said this before, but these are truly extraordinary circumstances which continue to call for extraordinary measures. We're communicating with other big cities across the country on a regular basis to share ideas and solutions and to keep the public safe, while at the same time working to ensure we have a plan for revenue loss. We are seeking financial relief from other orders of government, but we can't bank on this. It's also important for Edmontonians to know that increasing taxes to make up for this shortfall is not on the table. We don't want to make life more difficult than it already is during these unprecedented times. We will also be recommending to Council that the Capital City Plan should continue as planned through 2020 to 2022. This is in order to ensure we have proper funding for these projects. We can essentially borrow from our internal reserves and pay the money back in our next capital budget cycle in 2023. As I mentioned, there'll be more discussion related to the capital budget in May. I want to shift gears for a moment to recognize the extremely hardworking and dedicated members of our staff who helped us with our response, have been helping us to the response of this pandemic. We have many people working unbelievably hard on the front lines and behind the scenes to ensure Edmontonians, council, and staff have access to the services and information they need. This also extends to our utility providers that during this time continue to provide the water, wastewater, power, and telecom services with minimal or no interruption. We absolutely salute the extraordinary efforts of our healthcare workers, but I do want to acknowledge the hard work and courage of our City of Edmonton team as well. And now a message to Edmontonians. I know that we are announcing changes almost daily that impact people and businesses. I want to reiterate that every change we make is with your and your loved ones' safety in mind. Thank you for your continued patience as we figure out this together. And thank you for following the public health officials' guidelines when it comes to helping limit the spread of COVID-19 and for continuing to physically distance yourself from others. It is making a difference. Thank you, and Ms. Pearson and I are available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Adam. We have Dustin Cook of the Edmonton Journal and Dinesh Pratap of Global online. Dustin, I'll go to you first. Question?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yes, this morning there were technical difficulties. Question for Adam. Similar to my question for the mayor earlier this afternoon, the recommendations that will be made in a couple of weeks hinge on the forecast to mid-September for this pandemic with, an economic closure. What if it goes further than that? What if it goes to the end of the year? Will the city need to make changes and further cuts on the fly?
So in terms of the potential for further changes beyond the September timeframe that we've identified, what we did today was to highlight to council that depending on the pace of recovery, we provided them some scenarios that if we were to continue in this lockdown, if we were to see a recovery of a 50% nature or 75% nature, we gave them ranges of impacts. If we do, and we'll continue to monitor this, but if we do start to see that the relaxation of the restrictions aren't happening as quickly as we all hope, then we absolutely would have to come back to council with additional strategies to manage those revenue and expenditure reduction needs to support them. And those could come in the similar form that we've identified now in terms of expenditure reduction or leaning on our capital program or potentially tapping into our financial stabilization reserve. But at this point in time, we feel comfortable with the numbers that we presented in September, and we're hopeful that we'll start to see some of the restrictions lift, but we are prepared if that should continue.
Do you have a follow-up question, Dustin?
I do, yes. Quickly, is there an estimate that the city has for take up on the tax deferrals for 2 months? Is there an estimate cost for how much the city thinks will be deferred?
I wouldn't say that we have that estimate at this point in time, but what we can do is take that away and confirm and circle back to you, Dustin, with any information we have.
Okay, thank you.
We'll follow up, Dustin. Thank you. Dinesh, please go ahead.
Hey, Adam. So I just want to expand upon the $31.9 million in kind of mitigation and savings that has been found so far. How much more do you think you can add to that between now and next Thursday when the reports are released?
Well, part of the discussion we had with council today in private was around other scenarios that we would use to make up that difference, and one of them was related to different workforce strategies that we could employ to address that. The other one is capital, and on our capital, what we've identified is the potential to use an adjustment from a cash flow perspective to lessen the burden now and still commit to the projects that we have. So between those two measures and the potential to use the financial stabilization reserve, we're confident that we can come to council with a recommendation on the reduction side that meets the revenue impacts that we've identified, specifically that 140 some odd million, or sorry, 168 odd million.
Vinesh, do you have a follow-up question?
No, not a follow-up, but just a question related to Adam's initial comments, just related to the ETS incident. With respect, not knowing exactly what happened, but the person was struck by the bus turning left. There was a similar incident about 4 years ago, and just talk about the pillars, and the city at the time saying that they were going to address it. So in light of this accident, what happens now? What's the process in terms of the review? What does the city look at? And any concerns from your perspective?
I think it's too early to comment on that, Vinesh. I think we need to allow police to do their investigation, and as I mentioned, we would fully cooperate with the investigation. Once that's done, we can certainly identify if there's a need to address either that issue or another issue. We'll absolutely do that.
A reporter whose number ends in 61 has joined us. Could you identify yourself and go ahead and ask your question, please?
Hi, sorry, this is Nicole from CTV News. I actually just wanted to ask about what's going on with the city sports field, because I know that today a number of organizations were saying they were supposed to get an update from the city on what's happening in May.
So I think your question is related to an update on sports fields? Yeah. So continuing to work with the community groups and the sports groups, but at this point in time, we don't have a further update in terms of any specific dates that we would identify, other than to say the ability to undertake those sporting activities are really governed by the provincial health order in terms of the number of folks that can gather at a point in time, and the physical distancing requirements that are part of the public health order. But no specific update in terms of firm dates related to cancellations. Again, we continue to work with the sports groups and the community groups.
Sorry, if I could just follow up.
Go ahead, Nicole.
One league did tell us today that they were supposed to learn whether things would move forward on May 1st, and they were told that now everything has been put off until the end of May. So I don't know what information they received.
And I'm not sure the specifics on that, sorry. I'm not sure the specifics on that particular exchange, but I can just assure you that our folks continue to work with the different community groups and sports groups.
Nicole, that we will endeavor to be as consistent as possible in communicating with all groups about dates when we know what they are.
Do you have a date yet on when you might know what's going on, say, for May 1st?
No. We don't.
Thanks, Nicole. Are there any last questions from any participant online?
I'm good until tomorrow.
Okay, we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate your persistence in working with us in this way. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.